put yourself in a position where you can't retreat, where it's do or die, sink or swim. Here's what you'll find out. You'll develop incredible swimming skills. You'll find yourself stroking unlike you've ever seen before. Through the inspiration of desperation, you'll become more creative than ever before. Throw your whole self into it. All you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough.
Welcome to Burning the Ships, presented by 608B Capital. Today I am thrilled, very excited about my guest. One cool thing for me, selfishly, this podcast has done is it's allowed me to connect and get in front of people that probably without this platform, otherwise I probably would never have met these people, a lot of the folks that I'm having on. So it excites me because naturally I just love meeting new people. I love picking people's brains. I always have it. Going back to when I was a child, you get me around somebody that, has things in their life that I'm curious about. It's hard to get me to shut up. And I'm the same way now. So this podcast gives me that. And this guest is no different. Today I've got John Hewitt on. I'm going to read his bio and introduce him. And usually I don't do that. I kind of go off, my memory of my guest bio and when it comes to introducing them. But John he's 75 years old. He's got over 50 years of experience in the entrepreneur space. So there's a lot to cover, and I don't want to miss anything when introducing him. So, like I said, I'm going to get into his intro here, and then we'll get into the interview. One thing I will say, we did have a few technical issues throughout the interview. So it kind of cuts out and we'll try our best to clean that up, but you may hear it kind of cut out a couple times and come back in. But for the most part, we caught everything. And I think all of you guys are going to be inspired by his passion, especially at his age. He kind of lives out this whole mentality I've been talking about for a while now, creating a journey that you're so passionate about that is the destination, right? So and he talks about it in the interview, he has no intent of stopping anytime soon. So with that, I'm going to read his bio and then we'll, in an introduction, and then we'll get right into the interview. So today I'm thrilled to welcome a true entrepreneurial legend to Burning the Ships podcast, John T. Hewitt. With over 50 years of experience in the tax preparation industry, John has built not one, but two of the most recognizable brands in the business, Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax Service. Under his leadership, both companies achieved tremendous success, with Liberty Tax growing to over 4,000 locations and Jackson Hewitt over 6,000, 10,000 total. He started his career as an employee with H&R Block. So he's worked for the big three, owning two of them and was very successful with the other one. John is more than just a business mogul. He's a visionary innovator. He pioneered decision tree tax preparation software, revolutionizing the way tax professionals serve their clients. He's also a master of franchising, having helped thousands of entrepreneurs, not hundreds, thousands of entrepreneurs achieve their dreams of business ownership. Today, John continues to innovate as the CEO of Loyalty Brands, a network of franchise opportunities designed to empower entrepreneurs across industries. Known for his relentless drive, clear vision, and commitment to excellence, John is here to share his insights on life, business, leadership, and the mindset required to achieve extraordinary success. Please join me in welcoming John Hewitt to the show. Mr. John Hewitt, welcome to Burning the Ships podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled. I've been aware of you for a long time now. Just all of your successes in business and things of that nature. And was very fortunate to have. We've got a mutual person in our network that reached out and said you ought to get John on here, and he made the connection. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, because I know you're a very busy man, got a lot of irons in the fire and whatnot. And I recently, as I mentioned before we started recording, I listened to the audio of your book, I Compete. Love it. I absolutely love the book, everything. And I told you I made about 3 or 4 pages of notes that with a lot of questions I'd like to get to. So we'll hit on a couple of those as we go through. But John, in the intro, I kind of went through your bio at a high level and things like that. You've had, 50 plus years of experience as an entrepreneur, primarily in the tax space, with two of the biggest brands ever in the tax space, with being Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax. And now with your loyalty brand, you're continuing to uh, build brands through the franchise model and continuing to have success well into your later years in life. And I love every bit about that. And what's funny is yesterday I recorded a podcast with a 19-year-old entrepreneur. So I'm going from one extreme to the next here today, but I think you got a lot of youthful energy, and I'm glad you're bringing it on our show to share it with you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, John, and kind of let you do a quick intro of you take it wherever you'd like, so the listeners at home can know who you are, hear your voice, and then I've got some questions from there. So
Sure. I'll give the listeners a quick uh, few minutes on my 56 years of experience.
sure.
It started in 1969. I started at H&R Block, took a tax course, loved it, and been in taxes ever since. This is my 56th season. But 12 years later, after starting with H&R Block, while I was in college, part-time, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. So I've been with all three, the big three, the H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, and Liberty. And my father had bought one of the first Apple computers by mail, and he decided we should computerize taxes. So in 1981, we both quit our jobs, and I built the first tax software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it, way ahead of its time. Got blessed and found a company here in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. We put a group of investors together to buy the 6 offices, and I told them my goal was to have one more location than H&R Block, and they had 9,000 locations. We just needed to add 8,995 locations. Well, we never got there. Jackson Hewitt peaked at 6,000. So it became a $1 billion company. I sold my stock in 1997, 15 years after purchasing it, and started over. And I started Liberty Tax. And I had a 3-year non-compete that covered virtually the entire United States, but it didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt had never gone to Canada. Having grown up in Buffalo, I knew the Canadian tax system. So I had done Canadian returns. So we opened Liberty Tax in Canada. And within 3 years, I became one of the top 100 retail franchise chains in Canada. So I'd done it once in U.S., once in Canada. Came back to the United States in 2000 when my non-compete ended. Now I had to compete against myself, my own name, my own people, my own software, my own system. And yet we grew faster than not only Jackson Hewitt, but them and Block combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years. My second public company worth $500 million, and sold my stock. And I have started a new concept, loyalty brands, where we have 8 different franchise systems. We focus on 3 different things. One is tax and account. I've in my 56th year. Secondly is construction, led by our roofing and siding and solar division. And then thirdly, the fastest growing is pets, led by our mobile grooming. We're less than 4 years old in pets, and we're already the largest, fastest growing mobile pet groomer in the country. We're in 26 states and 87 cities. And it looks like that will be my third chain in the top 100 retail franchise chains in the United States.
Wow. So you're still going as strong as ever, obviously. And
yeah, they got to kill me to stop me.
right. And that is, I talk a lot, and I ask a lot of folks this on this podcast, but kind of the difference between the destination and the journey. And, I'm 43 years old, so I've got a long journey ahead of me, hopefully. And my take on that, and it seems like you're living this, is I want to create a journey so that I'm so passionate about that I don't ever want it to end. Like I can't envision a retirement. I can't envision a destination. Is that how you feel that about the journey itself?
Yeah, I totally changed when I was in high school. I knew I was going to get rich, and I was cocky. I knew I was going to get rich and become a millionaire, even though I was poor. And I thought I'd just make a few million and retire. But I learned that the treasure at the end of the rainbow, the check that you get 15 years later, boy, that's anticlimactic. It's you got to enjoy the journey. And so I learned that if you're not enjoying the journey, if you're not having fun, you're working at a place on Monday morning. If you're going to work and you're not looking forward to it, you're definitely going to the wrong place. So
Yes.
it should be thank God it's Monday, not thank God it's Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I love that. And you mentioned, when you were in high school, you knew you wanted to be what you have become. So you had that vision. I laughed at a story you told in your book when you were 4 years old. Tell that story about a present you received.
Yeah, my first attempt at being an entrepreneur when I was 4 years old, I received a sled for Christmas. So it was 1953. A sled cost $4. I guess when my mom tells the story. But before noon, I had gone next door and sold the sled for 10 cents.
That's great. So that kicked off the journey. So, and I'm sure you were dabbling in entrepreneurship throughout the years after that, but ultimately you did land in an employee role with H&R Block, and I've got to imagine that you mentioned a lot in the book of even as an employee, you got to think as an owner, and I have to imagine that you cut your teeth as an employee, but still having that entrepreneurial mindset and taking that approach to that job, which ultimately led to launching everything else you did. Do you want to elaborate on that mindset a little bit more?
Yeah, when you work for yourself, I'm sorry, when you work for someone else, you're still working for yourself. And in all the people I've hired in my career, thousands, only about less than 3% Aflac owners. But I've always had, the name of my book is I Compete, and I've always had in whatever I do, whether it's in school, whether it's in athletics, whether it's in playing cards or sports or in everything. I'm always obsessed about winning, and so I'm always going to act like I own it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the mindset. And we, I was a W-2 employee for many years. And now I own a couple real estate businesses, but um, I I led a pretty big team in that former career, and that was what I preached to them constantly because my mentors raised me that way. This is yours. You treat everything in life, not just business or a career, but it's yours. You take agency over it. If it fails, it's your fault. If it's great, then sharing that success with everybody else. And it's kind of like extreme ownership. I don't know if you've read that book by Jocko Willink, but it just the whole book is about that mindset. And I think a lot of people don't they're not comfortable embracing that mentality of having agency over something that truly isn't theirs, but it is theirs. You're choosing to be in that role. So love that mindset. So you mentioned the name of the book, I Compete. You obviously competition and winning is very important to you. That drives, all the success you've had. In the book, you mentioned a quote by, I think it was Vince Lombardi. I don't lose. I either win or the time ran out. And and then you learn in that not being able to win or the time running out. So elaborate on that a little bit, if you will, that mindset.
Yeah, Vince Lombardi's theory, and most of your viewers aren't old enough to remember who Vince Lombardi was, as it was 40 years or 50 years ago. But Rat often considered the best NFL coach ever, and certainly. But his theory was, we have a game plan, and we go onto the field. We know that we're not going to win every game, but we either are going to win or we're going to learn a lesson or lessons that make us a better competitor and more likely to win the next time. So the least thing we're going to do in those, we can't win every time. No one can. God doesn't let anyone every time, right? That would not be a pleasure, believe it or not. You have to have your downs to go along with your ups, and but you need to take away something, lesson learned from each and every loss. And I'm a horrible loser. I'm a poor loser, poor sport. I get actually, if I am ever depressed, it's or irritated, it's right after some kind of loss. Depending on the loss, it takes me a few minutes to might take me a few minutes to bounce back.
Yeah, I can relate because especially as a child when it came to sports, I just couldn't, I didn't know how to regulate. And as I've matured into an adult, I still, sometimes I lose it when I lose, but the hard part is, you have kids, correct? I heard you were
6 children, yes.
okay. Yeah. So the hard part for me as a parent, because I'm in the middle of it now, I have a 13 and an 8-year-old, but my 8-year-old son is just like I was. Horrible loser. He's good at sports, but right now we're in wrestling season. And when he loses, it's an hour process to get his head back in and stop him from crying and throwing things. And so I'm now in a position where I'm having to parent and try to teach a lesson to an 8-year-old, the same exact 8-year-old that I was, and still am in a lot of ways. Did you have to deal with that as a parent raising your children?
None of my children at that young of age were competitive.
Okay. Okay.
I had, if you in the book, I tell a story about my oldest son, who was he was in middle school and he wasn't, and he would drive me crazy because he wasn't aggressive.
Right.
And I remember when he was in 5 or 6 years old and they'd be on the soccer team. I love watching 5 and 6-year-olds play soccer because it's like a beehive of they go around wherever the ball is. There was like 20 players within 10 feet of the ball. It's like, look at that. And they'd all be kicking and mostly they kick each other instead of the ball. Yeah. So he was a little timid and he would shy away from that because he didn't want to get kicked. I mean, that's not a stupid thing. That's smart. Right. But so I tried to bribe him. I gave him 25% every time he touched the ball.
I love it.
So I tried to, but I never got through to him until he was in middle school. And it was a
Julio story.
Yeah.
Yes, please share that one. I never even had
Julio. That he was short, obviously Hispanic kid, and they're surrounded by tall white kids. And my son would be dribbling down the court like a fancy pantsy, and the ball would go up, a rebound will come up, and he'd just stand there from afar watching it. Julio just jump right in with all the big guys, and if the ball was on the floor, Julio would be in the pile trying to grab it and jump on it. And I finally got through to him when he was about that age, that you need to be like Julio. You need to be passionate like Julio. After that, he was fierce competitive. But until I got his mindset and what I was looking for, and I was trying to explain passion and commitment and
attitude,
a will to win. I couldn't explain it, but Julio was my example.
Yeah, and this is a good segue. I'm going to come back to some parenting questions I have because, as a young parent myself, I've got some questions about raising kids.
Sure.
We'll get back to that, but I want to stick on this Julio example because I think you did a beautiful job in the book, kind of relating that to business and life and in general. And you mentioned several times in the book how, like, as you've recruited talent or kind of interviewed franchisee owners and stuff like that over the years. I think you said something like, give me 100 people with good attitudes or give me 100 engineers. I want the 100 people with good attitudes. So I love that mentality. I believe it wholeheartedly, but I would like to hear you elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah. First of all, I stole that quote from Tom Watson Sr., founder of IBM. He said, if I can have 100 people with great attitude or 100 great engineers, I'll take the people with great attitude because you can teach engineering, you can't teach attitude.
Yeah.
And boy, I've learned that to my detriment. I've learned that in my career. I've tried to change dozens, if not 100 people's attitude, and always fail.
Yeah.
So that's just one of the big disappointments in life and changing attitudes. But Jason, I thought about it, and I didn't learn it until I was almost your age. What's the difference between the great leaders of, if you have two companies going in different directions that are in the same industry, a Walmart and a Kmart,
Yep.
incredible success, incredible tag. And what's the difference between the CEO, the CFO, the board of I mean, what's the difference in the two groups? Are they smarter? Are they more educated? Are they more experienced? And I realized that no, they couldn't be, because you can hire the smartest person or the most educated or the most experienced. So that wasn't the secret. The secret is attitude and the culture that you get as a result of that. And the culture really starts and ends with happy, successful employees. And, that Herb Keller, right about 5 years after I learned that lesson, he wrote a book about Southwest Airlines. He said, if you want, it used to be before then, our mission statement was customers for life. That customers number one, customers number one, customers number one. But Herb Keller said it right. If you want your customers to be treated as number one, you need to treat your staff as number one.
Yeah. Yeah. And attitude and effort. It's funny because I was raised by a single mom, and things were difficult when we were young. When I was young, but she would always just beat into, or not physically beat, but like beat it into our heads, drill it into our heads that the two things we can always control and that are gonna keep us moving in the right direction are our attitude and our effort. And then when I fast forward to when I started in my career in insurance, my former career, I had a mentor and a boss there that preached the exact same. He called it A&E. He made little plaques with it and everything, attitude and effort. And so that, like, I'm not the most skilled in many things, right? But I've always leaned on I'm gonna outwork most people. And I think over the course of a long period, that tends to shine more than the smartest person in the room or the most skilled person in the room. At least it's respected more, for sure, I think. So I love that example. And the Kmart, Walmart, that's a great analogy, because, you got two very similar models, right? They're retail stores, and one has gone on to be probably the biggest employer in the world, and the other one, where are they, right? And
They're getting bankrupt.
yeah, exactly. So, and you mentioned, you kind of quickly went through your 50 plus years doing what you've done. You mentioned when you left Jackson Hewitt, you were competing against your own name. Psychologically, how was that? Did you? Because I would imagine when you sold your shares, you went through your non-compete, but the competition piece kicked back in. Like, you want to do better than you did at the last place, but the last place has your name, and probably had a lot of people that you loved and respected that, bought into what your vision was there. So how did that work for you psychologically moving into the next business?
Well, I think a lot of people experience that in a lesser way. For example, if you're an athlete and you're playing for a professional baseball team, well, one day you're on the Dodgers, and the next day you're on the Phillies, and so you got to compete against your old teammates, and most of your old teammates are ambivalent. Some root for you, and some hate you for competing with them and beating them up. And so it's you have mixed feelings. But what I told when people got aggravated with me for competing, first of all, the at Jackson Hewitt, they only had about a 6% mark. So we're taking our business from the other 94%.
Right.
And I said, as long as you do what I taught you, as long as you keep providing the quality of service that I taught you, we can't hurt you, right? You only need to worry about one thing, and the 10 most important 2-letter words to be it is up to me. People ask me, what's the number one thing I worry about? And what they don't ask that as much as, but what keeps you up at night? Worry about. And I said, I don't worry about my competitors or the industry. I worry about ourselves. Is that execute? And so I said to the people that execute don't have any problem, right? They will prosper. They will prosper in the face of me or anyone else. So the only thing to be afraid of is themselves not executing, not anything that I bring to compete with them.
Right. I love it. That's an abundance mindset. Like you said, if they had 4% of the market share, or you had whatever it was, there's plenty out there for everybody, and just take that, man. I kind of, in a twisted way, I like the idea of creating competition. I want my competitors to step their game up because it forces me to, and I'm just competitive by nature. But it sounds like you kind of have that mindset as well, and I can certainly appreciate that. When I'm gonna ask you this, because it goes along with kind of winning and not winning. Do you think you're more motivated by winning or the fear of losing?
I have often thought about that, because the joy of winning and the excitement of winning and the thrill it drives me. But at the end of the day, I realized that I need to win like 8 times to make up for one loss. So it's the pain, not the fear of losing. It's the pain of losing.
Yep.
So it's just painful. So it's hard to tell for sure whether I'm in it to win it or I'm in it to not lose. But I think it's the pain of loss is so severe that drives me to win. And so I'm really driven by 2 classes of people. I'm people that are investors in me and work with me, and franchisees or employees, and also the people that don't invest in me or they're competing with me.
Yeah.
And so I'm almost as motivated as by the people that are on the other side against me versus the people that are on my side that I'm working for.
Yeah. I recently heard, and you seem to be into sports, so you'll probably know this reference, but Tom Brady was in an interview talking about this topic, winning versus losing. And he said, he's won all the Super Bowls, but he's lost several too, right? And he said the ones he lost, and he was given the example of the helmet catch against the Giants. Do you remember that? Okay. So
That was my favorite Super Bowl ever.
are you a Giants fan?
No, but they were undefeated. I was against, and I'm a Buffalo Bill fan. He never, I'm against Tom Brady until he went to Tampa Bay.
Yep. There you go. Well, he was talking about all of the Super Bowl wins. He can tell you some details of those games and some of the things he felt and stuff like that. But he said the losses, particularly that one, he can tell you everything he was smelling, tasting, feeling, everything about it, because it hurts so bad and it stands out so much. And that kind of goes right in line with we're talking about the pain of losing it. No matter how much you win, that loss it's going to take quite a bit of winning to drown that out, if ever. So, your story it has a lot, and I want to encourage everybody to go read this book or listen to it, because I'm a big reader, and for that, your team sent that book over to me, and I appreciate it. But it was very impactful, and I think it's good for anybody to have on their shelf and listen, or read. But your story is filled with, because we're going through a lot of things at a high level, but there's a lot of resiliency in there. There's a lot of persistence. There's a lot of grit. Things were not always pretty. You had to, there were times where you were on the verge of bankruptcy. There were times where you weren't taking a salary, and your wife was taking minimal, and your employees didn't know if they were going to get paid, and things like that. Talk to me about your mentality to just keep getting back up and going, because it's rare, but that is what separates the folks that have done what you've done and the folks that give up on the way?
Yeah, I'm often asked what is the most important thing in growing exponentially, and I've been blessed with huge exponential growth in two companies. First two companies, 10,000 locations. So incredibly blessed. But God is. I've never seen anyone that got to escape that didn't face adversity. Everyone has their difficulty, and so perseverance is the key attribute to success in whether it's in a relationship or in business or in school or whatever, in any activity. It's perseverance, and you're going to get knocked down, and the winners just always get up again. And I have a philosophy that I never look back and say, what if that hadn't happened or that had happened? That's just total waste of time. These circumstances evolved. Here I am. How am I going to get to my goal? So my goal, remember when we started Jackson Hewitt, was to get to 9,001 offices. And a couple times we almost went bankrupt. I never took my eye off that goal. I had to take a different route. Sometimes you have to tighten your belt, slow down, um, um, uh, shrink a little in some ways. But I never took my eye off that goal that we wanted to get to 9,000 offices. So even though we only had 6, so that I'm a big believer in setting huge, hairy, audacious goals, big, hairy, audacious goals. And because I'd rather go for 9,000 and get to 6,000 than go to 500 and get 600.
Absolutely.
So it's much more important to me to be all I can be than to go after mediocrity.
Yeah, I used to tell my team, and I think the same way now in my business. But if I'm hitting over half of my goals or exceeding them, I'm not setting them high enough. So that's kind of the way I approach it. But I am curious about when you talk about getting knocked down and getting back up and continuing to do that. I think some entrepreneurs have this twisted sense in a good way, or maybe not. I don't know, but where we almost embrace that. We almost want it. We want the chaos sometimes, and maybe not in the moment, but we look back on it and we're thankful we went through it. I know, and for myself, and I'm curious to get your take on this. When things get kind of smooth and everything's going good, I need another chaotic project or something, puzzle to solve. And if I don't have that, I'm not happy. I need that chaos, and the more I can curate the chaos, the better. I don't want to be hit upside the head by something, and blindsided. But how do you feel about that?
Well, since I always have huge goals, I never get to a spot where I'm complacent.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? Because I always am thinking, okay, if I had 300 locations this year, I'm going to need to add 400 next year and 500 the year after that. And so if I ever get my goals, which is occasional, I don't hit it every time, as you said. We set high goals and we meet some and we don't meet some, and so I'm always have a constant significant challenge in face of me. I mean, even when we went from 300 locations to 700, that's incredible growth, but I still got to get to 9,000.
Yeah.
So I'm always have that in the back of my mind, is that huge, and you're going to have to do things differently. You're going to have to, along the way, when you grow that way, it's always chaotic when you grow exponentially, and you're always going to have to exchange people, because the people that can run a company that has 100 offices aren't the same people that can run an organization with 1,000 offices, and they're not the same as an organization 9,000 offices. So you're going to have to change people along the way, and they're either going to have to improve, and very few can, or you're going to have to move them out or sideways and bring in people that can handle the the bigger organizations. So it's always the challenge.
Can you speak on how this is kind of this is relevant as we kind of roll into a new year? You know, a lot of businesses and individuals are setting goals, right? They're setting their annual goals or whatever the case may be. And you were a big goal guy, obviously, you still are. How it's one thing to set a goal and have a vision and just try to speak it into existence. But did you have a like a formalized strategy of backing into a goal? So set the goal, and then now I've got to have these quarterly goals or monthly or daily tasks that I've got to hit every day, or my team does, in order to stay on track towards that goal? Or did you just have this, come hell or high water, I'm going to hit it? I mean, what's the mentality there?
We have a planning retreat every year, and I've been doing this for 30 years. And we get the top management together and some representatives of the franchise community. And we sit in a room and talk about our SWOT analysis, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then we follow that up with a 5-year goal. And we talk about it, and everyone throws out a number. And then I pick a number somewhere in between. And then, okay, we've got our 5-year goal. And then we spend about an hour, hour and a half on that. And then, okay, if we're going to be there in 5 years, where are we going to be in 3 years? Spend about an hour, hour and a half on that. And then where are we going to be this year? And then once we get this year, then, okay, what does that mean for each month this year? So for example, if we're going to bring in 240 new franchisees this year, are we going to bring in January? How many are we going to bring in February? How many people do we have to have in the training department to train them? How often do we have to have a training? How much how many employees do we need to support them to answer their questions, field consultants? And so everyone, how much marketing dollars, if we're going to sell 240 franchise, we're going to need 24,000 leads. And so the marketing department needs to go get 24,000 leads. And then the sales department has to bring in 240. How many salespeople do we need? How many leads do we need? How many how many calls with the executives and do they need? How many days do people come in and have events to bring in new franchise? Yeah, it starts with 5 years, big picture, 3 years, big picture. And then you get down into 1 year, which is now you're really into the nitty gritty. And then every month during that year.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I expected you would say. And what I love about that strategy, because we approach it the same way, is when you're doing it that way, now you're tracking metrics almost so granular, it's on a daily basis. And if you're not tracking towards your, maybe you're tracking it on a daily basis, you're not tracking towards your monthly or quarterly goal that tracks towards the bigger goal, you can dig in and say, okay, did I make my phone calls? Did I do these efforts? And if I did, is there a training opportunity here to improve and things like that? So I love that. I mean, you articulated that very well, coming reverse from the big vision down to the daily goals. So that's perfect. I want to ask you, this is a very relevant because you said you were born in 1949. So you are 75?
Correct.
Okay. Which is fitting because something I talk about very often on here that drives me is I'm always thinking, what will 75-year-old Jason think of the decision I'm making right now? What will 75-year-old Jason, will he respect me? Will he have any regrets that I've done something to compromise his life at 75 because of a decision I made at 25 or 35 or 45. So I'm always steered by that. You are 75-year-old John. When you look back at 20, 30, 40, 50 and on John, and reflect back, are there any regrets? I know you said earlier that you keep that vision straightforward. You don't dwell too much and things like that. But are there things you wish you would have done different, or do you treat them all, the failures, as learning opportunities that have set you up now?
Yeah, I never look back and say, what if? And they say people that are the most successful have made the most mistakes. So I would have a zillion regrets. I made a zillion mistakes.
Right.
I make a mistake, if not every a minute, every 2 minutes, right? So I'm still making mistakes. But I don't worry about that. I only worry about winning and, and doing it in a principled, godly way. So I have my goals and my principles, and my favorite Shakespeare is, "This above all, to thine own self be true." So I know that I can't do things that are going to please everyone, and yet you have to do the right things. And for example, if I have 500 franchisees, and if I went to each of them and said, "I'm going to give you all $10,000," you know what? They would complain.
Yeah.
You would think they would be, "Wow, that's fantastic! You just sending me $10,000." What would happen is the people that were making the most money, that were paying the highest royalties, would say, "Well, that guy pays you royalties of $5,000 a year, and I'm paying you royalties of $500,000 a year. So if he gets 10,000, I should get 500,000."
Right.
And then the guy that's making that's only paying brand new, only paying $5,000 in royalty, minimum royalty, he says, "That guy's making a profit of 600,000 a year, and I'm losing money. If I need his 10,000, give it to me."
Yeah.
So you can't please everyone, and you can't avoid mistakes. And so I always get up, and this is where I'm at, and I'm screwed up, and I can only answer to God for screwing up and ask forgiveness. But I don't dwell on my mistakes for 1 minute.
Yeah. Perfect. I mean, it's that mentality of just go, and then that's it. You talk about in the book, um, a good bit about delegating and letting your employees or your franchisees fail. And even when you want to step in and fix their problems, you don't, because through failure, you know that there's growth with that. So I love that concept. That's something you hear a lot. But when I was hearing it, it made me think about my children. And this is where I want to get back to, because we spoke about your kids a little bit earlier. You've raised 6 kids. I've only got 2 kids, and we're in the thick of it, 13 and 8. My kids, and I would imagine your children, had a different life than your kids had a different life than you did. Meaning, they had more opportunity, there were more resources available because of what their dad and mom had created, and we're the same way. My kids, from a financial standpoint, they don't feel any struggle. They don't feel any of the hardship that I may have felt. So a question I ask a lot of my experienced guests that have raised kids is, especially you, because your kids were raised in an environment of wealth. Like, you created wealth as they were being raised. How did you create or curate some adversity for them? And how did you deal with letting them fail and learn in life when they didn't really have much natural adversity when it comes to financial things and things like that?
Well, the problem is there's 2 of us, right? There's 2 parents.
Yep.
So if it was all up to me, it would have been it would have been
Understand.
And their mothers are very, I've mother of 4 and mother of 2, and their mothers are not into the philosophy that you're espousing. They're
Okay.
into give them everything.
Okay.
So and with my money, give them everything as long as that's
I may have asked a touchy question here.
well, it's and you have to face that in raising children, right? That and a lot of people, that significant others, when they choose their significant other, they fail to have that discussion in advance of how we're going to raise the children,
Right.
and values, and so it becomes a bone of contention in later years. But I can't do a good job of answering your questions because I have 6 spoiled rich kids,
Right.
and here's an example. When one of my children, I was absentee. I was a father that the mother had custody of the children. And I made the mistake. My son was about 8, 9 years old. He was in Cub Scouts. And whenever I saw him every weekend, every 2 weekends. He lived in Miami. I lived in Virginia Beach. And I saw him every 2 weekends. And which was a struggle to get to Miami, but it's a nice place to visit during January and February and December when you live in Virginia Beach, right? So that kind of made up for it 3 or 4 months a year. But I had just a valuable insight into my parenting. His mother called me and said his Cub Scout banquet is this Friday, and he'd love for you to attend. And I said, yeah, right. I mean, I've been a kid. I've been a 9-year-old kid. It didn't matter to me whether my dad came to my banquet or not. So I said, yeah, right. And so she said, John Jr., do you want? Would you like your dad to come to your Cub Scout banquet? And he said, can I drink Coke? And what I realized is when he came to visit me for 2 days, I wouldn't let him have sugared soda. He could have juice or water or anything, but he could not have soda and with sugar in it. And so I realized that I was just wasting my time. That 12 odd days of every 14, he could have all the Coke he wanted. The 2 days that I was interceding, it didn't matter. He's going to go back and he's going to resent me for it. Yep. Right. So I learned a valuable parenting tip after that. And from then on, drink whatever you want. I mean, I can counsel you not to do it. But in the United States, I've found, Jason, that our kids are not, I try to preach this to all my franchisees, to all my children, to everyone I meet, that if you're healthy and alive and living in the United States, you're the top 1% or 2% most fortunate people on the planet. And that you're blessed beyond belief. And instead of, as Americans, I find that 90% of Americans, including my own children, are not properly appreciative. And, I think that's one of the things that sets me apart from other people, that when I was young and I saw other children who were paraplegic or died or had learning disabilities or blind or deaf, I said, I could be that. I'm just so blessed. And so, I've never had a bad day since I was in first or second grade. And I realized how blessed I am. But to get through to other Americans, that simple concept. And we as Americans are a very selfish people. So if you can ever solve the problem, tell me, because my children are grown, but I consider all my franchisees as my children. So if you can ever figure out how to make people feel grateful, properly grateful for the blessings that God has given them, then I'd love to know the secret.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly actively trying to figure it out in real time, right? As I'm building businesses and things like that. And I ask the question a lot because I don't have the answers. Now my wife and I are on the same page, so we don't have that issue, but it's so easy to help them with everything, right? I mean, little things like
it hurts. It hurts to say no.
Right. Yeah. And so we have to hurt ourselves. I mean, it's simple things like packing their lunch. They're capable of packing their lunch. They don't need mom and dad to do that every day. So we make them do that. And then down to but the other side of it is, like, we travel a lot. We get to go on vacations that a lot of people don't, and things like that. But making the kids realize that this is not how everybody has it, and you need to appreciate it. And then trying to teach them to be generous with the resources they have as they get older and things like that. That's another piece of it. But, what you were talking about earlier, how lucky we are to be here and born into what we were. No matter what you have in this country, you're exactly right. If you're born in America and for the most part, somebody comes up to you. This is what I used to tell my employees all the time that are complaining about little things and they're having a bad day. If somebody came up to you and asked you to put your life into a hat along with 1,000 other lives around the world, you would always pick you'd want yours back out of it. Always, 99.9% of the time. So stop complaining, be grateful, let's move on. And so obviously you have that same philosophy, and I appreciate that. And you mentioned wanting to help people out, and I know you've done a lot of philanthropic stuff across the world. Why is that so important to you?
One of my favorite sayings is, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so as I became, and in addition to that, giving back is so important. And I think I encourage everyone to focus. My heart called out for starving people in the world. When I sat in church and heard 35,000 people a day are dying of hunger, that got to me. And so my focus has been on world hunger. And I founded a World Hunger Organization that has served over 500 million meals and has 100 employees. And it's called Stop Hunger Now. And I'm very proud of that. But it's absolutely, and we don't suggest to everyone to give to my charity, but they should give to the charity of their choice. And as you succeed, giving back is a requirement of God.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We'll put a link in the notes to that charity if any of the listeners want to check it out and consider donating to that. And you've made, you talk about it. I believe that the world kind of, chooses the right people most of the time and to put in the right spots. And you mentioned the help you've done there. You've also made close to 1,000 millionaires through the net that you've casted through your franchise model and stuff like that. And
Over 1,000, yep.
And I know you probably take more pride in that than anything else you've done, I would imagine. That and the ability to help out like these starving children and stuff like that. Is you talk about tracking wins and winning. That's a win, my friend. I mean, that is a win. You've impacted a lot of lives, and I only know about it through, kind of sitting in the back row, reading your book and hearing the stories. But I can tell you that, if you impact that many people just by having a big enough vision to do so and never letting up on that is, that's an impact on this world. So I'd like to kind of wrap things up now with giving you the chance to talk a little bit. You've got so many years of experience, wisdom. You've ridden the waves over the years of technology and all that. Really, technology is what launched you in a way. You talk about the computer model and stuff like that. Folks, a lot of my listeners are around my age. They're entrepreneurs. We have a lot of young entrepreneurs too. If you could, and I know you could probably spend hours talking about this, but if you could dwindle it down to a few key principles to really make sure that folks sure up that could position them to have success, and maybe not the level you did, but some type of a success that would be a win to whatever a win is to them, what would it be?
Yeah, it's real simple. Find something you love to do, work hard, persevere. It's that simple. And
Easy.
Life, it should be thank God it's Monday, not thank God it's Friday. And everything worthwhile requires hard work. And the most important thing is when you get knocked down, you got to always get up. It's perseverance is the number one attribute in success in anything.
Yeah, I love it. And that can, there's any words you can put there: grit, perseverance, all that stuff. And I think it, it may come off as cliche because a lot of successful entrepreneurs say it, but they say it for a reason. They're successful for a reason. So, but yeah, John, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. You're a busy man. You're impacting a lot of people, and to take the time to share your story and your wisdom with my audience, it means a lot to me, and I'm very grateful. I want to encourage everybody to check out John's book. Reach out to me if you need to, figure out how to find it or anything, but it's called I Compete. I'll drop the link in the show notes. Check out the Stop Hunger Now charity. And John, are you on, or your company Loyalty Brand, are y'all on social media? Are y'all active there?
Yeah, if your viewers go into loyaltybrands.com, they get a link to a free book.
Okay. All right. So we'll definitely drop that. I appreciate that. And check out what John's doing. I mean, here you are getting into the age where most people are retired, kicked back, and just letting life kind of come to an end. You're grinding right to, till hopefully 50 more years. But I can appreciate that grind, but I know because of the way you articulate it, it's not a grind to you. It's what you enjoy doing, and you love this journey. And that inspires me, as someone who's got many years ahead of me to follow what you're doing. And that model and those principles is very inspiring and to me and to my listeners. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure.
Yep. Thanks a lot. Good to meet you,
Have a
John.
great day.
Take care. Hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Having Mr. Hewitt on here. He was with 50 plus years of experience, all that he has seen and done in business, he's grown essentially $2 billion companies that have generated over 10,000 franchise offices across the country. So those are just numbers that most of us can't even fathom. But to have him on, share his wisdom, it was, just a privilege for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. One thing that he mentioned, and I hope you guys take him up on this, visit his website, shoot him a message, and reference the podcast, and he'll have his team send a free copy of his book, I Compete. I have read the book. It's phenomenal. I encourage everybody to take him up on that and go check it out. I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank our incredible sponsor, 608B Capital. If you're an accredited investor looking for 8 to 12% passive returns, or a real estate fix and flipper in need of short-term loan products, 608B Capital, we've got you covered. Just visit our website, 608bcapital.com, to learn more about how we can help you fuel your next move. If you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps us reach and inspire a bigger audience. And don't forget to share this episode with your friends, family, or anyone who needs the extra push to take their own leap of faith. And remember, this podcast is about going all in, burning the ships, and never looking back. So, as you step into your own journey, let me leave you with this. Dream boldly, act fearlessly, and never let the fear of failure stop you from chasing the life that you truly want. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.